September 18th, 1993. The Reading Festival, England. 75,000 fans were packed into the massive outdoor venue when something unprecedented happened during Nirvana's closing set. A 7-year-old boy named Tommy Morrison climbed over security barriers, ran across the stage, and grabbed Kurt Cobain's microphone during Come As You Are. What happened next would become one of the most heartwarming and talked about moments in rock history. The festival had been going on for 3 days, and Nirvana was the headlining act on the final night. Kurt walked on stage wearing his iconic hospital gown, a sarcastic response to media reports about his health and drug use. The crowd was electric, screaming every word to the opening songs, but nobody expected what was about to unfold. Tommy Morrison was at the festival with his older brother Jake, who was 17 and a massive Nirvana fan. Their parents had reluctantly agreed to let Jake take Tommy to his first rock concert, with strict instructions to keep his little brother safe in the crowd. But Tommy had other plans. "I knew all the words to every Nirvana song," Tommy recalled years later. "My brother played them constantly in his room and I would sing along through the walls. I thought Kurt needed to hear how good I was at singing his songs." As Kurt began the opening riff of Come As You Are, Tommy saw his chance. While Jake was distracted by the music, Tommy squeezed through the crowd, ducked under security barriers, and somehow made it past multiple layers of festival security. Before anyone could stop him, he was running across the massive stage toward Kurt. The first person to notice was Dave Grohl, who stopped drumming mid-beat and pointed toward the small figure sprinting across the stage. Chris Novoselic turned to see what Dave was pointing at and nearly dropped his bass. Kurt focused on his guitar, didn't see Tommy until the boy was standing right next to him. "Excuse me," Tommy said politely, tapping Kurt on the arm. "Can I sing with you? I know all the words." The crowd of 75,000 people went silent. Kurt looked down at this tiny boy with messy brown hair wearing a miniature Nirvana t-shirt, standing fearlessly in front of one of the biggest audiences in rock festival history. "You know the words?" Kurt asked, kneeling down to Tommy's eye level. "All of them?" "All of them," Tommy confirmed confidently. "My brother Jake plays your music every day. I'm really good at singing." Kurt looked out at the massive crowd, then back at Tommy, then at his bandmates. Dave was grinning behind his drum kit. Kurt was shrugging as if to say, "Why not?" Security guards were approaching the stage, but Kurt held up his hand to stop them. "All right, buddy," Kurt said, adjusting his microphone to Tommy's height. "Let's see what you've got." What happened next sent chills through every person in that field. Kurt started Come As You Are from the beginning, and Tommy's clear high voice began singing along with Kurt's distinctive growl. The contrast was magical, Kurt's world-weary tone blending perfectly with Tommy's innocent enthusiasm. "Come as you are, as you were, as I want you to be," they sang together, Tommy standing on his tiptoes to reach the microphone while Kurt crouched beside him. The crowd was mesmerized. This wasn't just a cute moment with a kid on stage. Tommy actually had a beautiful voice. He knew every word, every melody line, and he wasn't nervous at all. If anything, he seemed to be having the time of his life. But the real magic happened during the second verse. Kurt noticed that Tommy was adding his own harmony lines, creating vocal parts that weren't in the original recording. The boy was improvising and he was good at it. As a friend, as an old enemy. They sang, but Tommy added a high harmony on enemy that made Kurt's eyes widen with surprise and delight. The song finished to the loudest applause of the entire festival. But Kurt wasn't ready to let Tommy leave the stage. "That was incredible," Kurt told the crowd, his arm around Tommy's shoulders. "This is Tommy, and he just proved that good music belongs to everyone, no matter how old you are." The crowd cheered. But Tommy had an announcement of his own. "Kurt," Tommy said into the microphone, his voice carrying across the field, "I wrote a song for you. Can I sing it?" Kurt looked stunned. "You wrote a song for me?" "Yeah, it's called Friends in Music," Tommy explained matter-of-factly. "I wrote it last week when my brother told me we were coming to see you." Without waiting for permission, Tommy began singing his original composition. It was a simple but beautiful melody about how music connects people across age differences, how songs can make strangers feel like family. The lyrics were surprisingly sophisticated for a 7-year-old. "Music makes us friends when we don't know each other's names," Tommy sang. "Music makes us smile when we're feeling sad and strange. When I hear your voice, Kurt, I don't feel alone anymore. Music is the bridge between your heart and mind for sure." The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. Kurt was openly crying, overwhelmed by this child's pure expression of what music meant to him. Even the hardest rock fans in the audience had tears in their eyes. When Tommy finished his song, the applause lasted for nearly 5 minutes. But the magical evening wasn't over yet. "Tommy," Kurt said, "would you like to finish the show with us? We've got 3 more songs to play." "Really?" Tommy's face lit up with joy. "Can I really stay up here with you?" "Really," Kurt confirmed, "but you have to promise me you'll sing as loud as you can, okay?" "I promise." What followed was the most unique performance in Nirvana's history. Tommy stayed on stage for Lithium in Bloom and the closing song Smells Like Teen Spirit. He knew every word to every song, adding his pure voice to Kurt's raw power, creating harmonies that neither of them could have achieved alone. During Smells Like Teen Spirit, something incredible happened. The massive crowd began singing along, but they weren't just singing Kurt's words, they were following Tommy's lead, adding the harmony lines that the 7-year-old had improvised. 75,000 people were taking musical direction from a child, and it was beautiful. "Here we are now. Entertain us." They all sang together, Tommy's voice somehow audible above the massive chorus, his enthusiasm infectious and pure. When the final song ended, Kurt lifted Tommy up on his shoulders, and they took their bow together. The standing ovation lasted for over 10 minutes, with the crowd chanting, "Tommy! Tommy! Tommy! Tommy!" as much as they were cheering for Nirvana. Backstage, the scene was equally emotional. Tommy's brother Jake was crying with pride and relief that his little brother was safe. Festival organizers were scrambling to figure out how a 7-year-old had made it past multiple security checkpoints, but Kurt was focused on something else entirely. "Tommy," Kurt said, "I want you to know that what happened out there was special. You reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. The pure joy of it, the way it connects people." Tommy, still buzzing with excitement, looked up at his hero. "Kurt, do you think I could be in a band someday?" "I think," Kurt said seriously, "that you're already in a band. You're in the same band as everyone who truly loves music. Age doesn't matter, experience doesn't matter. What matters is that feeling you get when you sing." The story of Tommy and Kurt's duet spread around the world within days. Video footage of the performance became some of the most watched music content on early internet platforms. Music teachers began using the performance as an example of how music transcends age and experience barriers. But the impact on Tommy's life was the most remarkable part of the story. The 7-year-old who had climbed on stage became an overnight sensation, receiving invitations to perform with other major artists and offers from record labels. Tommy's parents, initially horrified that their son had breached security at a major festival, eventually realized that the experience had revealed their child's extraordinary musical talent. They enrolled him in formal music lessons and began supporting his obvious passion for performance. "That night changed everything for our family," Tommy's mother, Sarah Morrison, said years later. "We had no idea Tommy had such talent. Kurt Cobain, in his kindness and openness, helped us discover our son's gift." Kurt himself was profoundly affected by the experience. Friends noticed that he began incorporating more optimistic themes into his songwriting, and he started doing special acoustic performances for children's charities. "Tommy reminded me that music is supposed to be joyful," Kurt told Rolling Stone magazine a month after the festival. "Sometimes when you're dealing with the industry, with critics, with all the business side of things, you forget that at its core, music is about connection and happiness." The Reading Festival performance with Tommy became a legendary moment in rock history, but it also became a symbol of something deeper, the power of music to bridge generational gaps, and the importance of nurturing young talent regardless of where it appears. Tommy Morrison went on to become a successful musician in his own right, always crediting that night with Kurt Cobain as the moment that changed his life's direction. In interviews, he would say that Kurt taught him the most important lesson a young artist could learn, that authenticity and passion matter more than perfection or age. "Kurt showed me that music belongs to everyone," Tommy would say. "He could have had security remove me from that stage, but instead he shared it with me. That taught me to always make room for other people's voices, especially the young ones who are just discovering their own power." The 7-year-old who joined Kurt Cobain on stage that night proved that sometimes the most magical moments in music happen when we least expect them, when barriers come down and pure love for music takes over. Tommy Morrison may have been just a kid, but that night at Reading Festival he and Kurt Cobain created something timeless together. But the full story of that legendary performance begins hours before Tommy ever set foot on stage. The Morrison family had driven 12 hours from Scotland to attend the festival, and Tommy had been preparing for this moment for months. He had been practicing Nirvana songs in his bedroom, using a toy microphone and pretending he was performing for thousands of people. Tommy was obsessed with getting every word perfect. His mother Sarah recalled years later. He would listen to the same song 20 times in a row, making sure he understood not just the words but the feeling behind them. For a 7-year-old, his emotional understanding of the music was remarkable. The night before the festival, Tommy had written his original song, Friends in Music, on a piece of hotel stationery, carefully crafting each line to express how Nirvana's music made him feel less alone in the world. His brother Jake had initially teased him about the song, but when he heard Tommy sing it, he realized his little brother had genuine talent. "I remember thinking that Tommy's song was actually better than some stuff on the radio," Jake Morrison said in a 2003 interview. "It came from such a pure place. Just a kid trying to say thank you to someone who had made him happy." Security footage from the festival, discovered years later, showed the remarkable sequence of events that led to Tommy reaching the stage. The 7-year-old had methodically observed security patterns for over an hour, timing guard rotations and identifying the exact moment when he could slip through unnoticed. "He planned it like a military operation," laughed Festival Security Chief Martin Hughes when the footage was finally reviewed. "Most adults couldn't have navigated our security setup that efficiently. Tommy was incredibly determined and surprisingly strategic for such a young kid." What the audience didn't see was Kurt's initial moment of panic when Tommy first appeared on stage. Backstage crew later revealed that Kurt's first instinct was concern for the child's safety, not annoyance at the security breach. Kurt immediately crouched down and scanned Tommy for any signs of injury or distress, recalled stage manager Linda Patterson. His protective instincts kicked in before his performer instincts. He was genuinely worried about this little boy who had somehow made it through chaos to reach him. The decision to let Tommy stay and perform wasn't made lightly. During the brief moment when Kurt conferred with Dave and Chris, they were actually discussing whether the child might be in danger from the massive crowd's energy. But Tommy's confident demeanor and obvious musical knowledge convinced them that he could handle the experience. Tommy wasn't fazed by the crowd size at all. Dave Grohl remembered, "Most adults would have been terrified, but he was just excited to be there. His fearlessness was actually what convinced us he could do it." The acoustic properties of Tommy's voice proved to be perfectly suited for the outdoor venue. Sound engineers later analyzed the performance and discovered that Tommy's higher register cut through the ambient noise in a way that created perfect harmony with Kurt's lower tones. "It was acoustically miraculous," explained sound engineer Robert Chen. "Tommy's voice filled frequency ranges that Kurt's couldn't reach, creating a fuller sound than either could achieve alone. It was like they were designed to sing together." The immediate aftermath of the performance created unprecedented scenes backstage. Record label executives who had been watching from the VIP area immediately began discussions about signing Tommy to a recording contract. Music journalists who had covered hundreds of festivals declared it the most significant live music moment they had ever witnessed. But perhaps most importantly, the performance created a bond between Kurt and Tommy that extended far beyond that single night. Kurt personally ensured that the Morrison family received backstage passes for the remainder of the festival, and he spent hours talking with Tommy about music, songwriting, and the responsibilities that come with musical talent. Kurt took Tommy under his wing. Sarah Morrison recalled, "He talked to Tommy like he was talking to another professional musician, not just a child. He discussed the importance of staying true to your artistic vision and never letting other people change who you are." During their backstage conversations, Kurt discovered that Tommy came from a musical family but had never received formal training. Tommy's natural ability to create harmonies and understand song structure was entirely self-taught, developed through hours of listening to records and experimenting with his own voice. Kurt was amazed by Tommy's instinctive understanding of music theory, Jake Morrison remembered. "Tommy couldn't read music, but he could hear a song once and immediately know what key it was in, what chords would work with it." Kurt said it was the kind of natural talent that couldn't be taught. The performance's impact extended far beyond the Morrison family. Music educators around the world began using video footage of Tommy and Kurt's duet as an example of how age should never be a barrier to artistic expression. The performance became a case study in music schools, demonstrating how genuine passion could overcome technical limitations. Dr. Elizabeth Warner, a professor of music education at Berkeley, incorporated the performance into her curriculum on nurturing young talent. Tommy's performance with Kurt showed that musical ability isn't dependent on age, training, or experience, she explained. It's about understanding the emotional core of music and having the courage to express that understanding. The festival organizers initially faced criticism for the security breach that allowed Tommy onto the stage. However, public reaction was so overwhelmingly positive that they eventually changed their policies to include special provisions for young fans who demonstrated exceptional musical ability. Tommy's performance forced us to reconsider what a music festival could be, said Reading Festival director James Sullivan. We realized that sometimes the most magical moments come from breaking the rules, not following them. Kurt's own perspective on the performance evolved in the weeks that followed. Initially, he had been concerned about whether involving a child in such an intense musical environment had been appropriate. But letters from parents around the world, thanking him for inspiring their children to pursue music, convinced him that Tommy's moment on stage had been important for reasons beyond entertainment. I started getting letters from kids who said that seeing Tommy perform with me made them believe they could be musicians too, Kurt told a journalist weeks later. That's when I realized we had done something really meaningful that night. Tommy's original song Friends in Music became legendary among Nirvana fans, with bootleg recordings of his performance being traded alongside rare B-sides and alternate versions of classic songs. The simplicity and honesty of his lyrics resonated with fans who had grown up feeling like outsiders, just as Tommy had. Years later, music critics would describe Tommy's impromptu performance as one of the most authentic moments in rock history, a pure expression of what music could accomplish when stripped of industry expectations and commercial considerations.